Okay, so before the break, we built this device login system. Well, we didn't really build it, we integrated it into our app. So we had album pages, just like normal, but now we added a thing where we can log in and log out. Ooh, I'll come back to that. Albums. Oh, okay, this is gonna be good. Hold on, think for a second. Okay, let's do it the quick way. I was going to do a more kind of scenic route on how to build pages, but maybe we'll come back to that. Okay, so we have an album. What would be pretty nice is if we could have an album picture. And right now we've never really done that. Like we have form fields for how to create like text and numbers and dates and things, but just it's not like data like files. And it's not exceptionally hard actually, but device does all, or carrierwave does all the work for us, so we're just gonna use it. All of the documentation for carrierwave is again in the on the gem page. And it's mostly this chunk. There are a few things we need to set up first. I was going to do it in a different way, so that's what I'm kind of thinking about. Alright, okay, let's do it this way. Okay, so we're going to come back to carrierwave. So again, like device, that we're going to do some stuff first and then come back. So let's do images without carrierwave at all. That we're just going to link out to existing stuff. Flickr, no, what is Flickr? Where is somewhere with images? Imager.com. Let's pick an image. So I'm going to start by just linking out to existing images on the internet. So not yet uploading our own ones, just as an in-between step, because we have to do some Rails setup, and I think it will be easier to like explain the Rails setup on its own and then add the carrierwave. Okay, so how would we do that? Not there. So we have an album. It has a title and a rating field, but we need somewhere to put the images. And in this case, I'd kind of like to just store this straight in there, like in the database in a field, and then print it out on the page. So how do we do that? Where did my thing go? Nope. Nope. And nope. Okay. So adding a field is actually one of the more irritating bits, because you kind of have to go through the whole chain. You've got to add it to the database, and then you've got to change your views to be aware of it, and you also got to fiddle with the controller a bit because it interferes in the middle. So let's start off with the easiest bit, which is changing the database. And anytime we have this database over here, we have the rating column, it would be nice to have an image field. We could create it in this user interface, but then if we're all working in a team, you guys won't have the same changes. So, time for a migration. So head to your terminal, and what do we want? Rails generate migration Okay, so 3 steps for migration. First, create the file. Second, fill it in. Third, run it with week3day2 migrate. So we've generated it, now we need to fill it in. Let's head to the place that created it, which is db migrate blah 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 blah. That'll be the last one. And it's empty. In this case I want to add a column. So add a column here, add a column here. The syntax for column, add column, I think, is you give it the table name, then the name of the new field, which is just going to call picture, and the type, which is going to be a string, because we're not really storing a picture yet. We're storing like an URL to a picture, and that's just letters, so it's just still a string. Oops. Okay, so with migrations, actually migrations are a good one to double check that you save it before you run it, because what quite often happens is you start off blank, you fill it in, and then you run it, but I forgot to hit save, so it ends up running the empty version from before I filled it in. And it's not the end of the world, it's just quite irritating. So it's one of those ones to be quite disciplined about checking. So rake db migrate, and you should see add column, albums, picture, string. Okay, minor point. In the beginning we did Rails new and Rails generate, and now we're doing rake something something. There's no real pattern for that when you use Rails and when you use rake. I think the Rails one, there's only like 4 or 5 built-in ones, and rake can be a million different ones depending on what gems you have. So it doesn't really matter. Again, it's like you use rake db migrate because the documentation says rake db migrate.
Why did we create a table for this?
Just because this is how the example is.
Basically free table, table of free columns.
Just because this is the example. That was the other thing I was going to do, but I think we don't have time to do it. To create a dedicated pictures table. This is also an option. Usually the difference is if it's quite a simple image, like I don't know, you have a user and they have a profile picture, and like that's kind of it. Whereas if it's something like Instagram, where a picture is a big thing, that it's like it's gonna have its own page, you'll have comments related to it, it needs a title and a description and when was it created and all that stuff. Whereas in this one it's just literally like I need somewhere to put this piece of text, and in this case it's like just throw it in the album table. Okay, so we could have had a different model. We're not going to. There's no huge difference, or there are differences, but it's not significant at this point. Okay, dokie. So to test that, the easiest way to test it is on the console, which is like Tux, and you can do things like user.first to see the users, and album.first to see the first album, and now you can see on album first there is picture nil, and that's usually a good test for like, has the migration worked, like are the table columns now there. One thing is that we didn't have to change the album model. It just automatically knows what columns exist because it asks the database. So we don't have to tell it. Okay, so let's set one. So album first.update attribute. So show you. Hang on. So this is a neat trick that we did before, or different before. So before we did, oh actually is that right? Before we did like get a Ruby object, change it and then do .save on it. We can, if we want, do it all in one go with this update attribute, which is picture. Actually, just 1 second. So find a picture URL on the internet and paste it in there. So it's like saying, find me the first album and straight away go update attribute, like update this column. Oh, this may not work. Alright, wait 2 seconds. I have the syntax wrong. It should be colon picture and then a comma and then the value.
Space between everything.
It doesn't matter. I put it in to make it more readable, but you don't need them. Alright. If you run it, then when you do album.first, it should now be in there.
Probably missed out.
Do I have to?
Yeah, of course. And put a comma.
Sorry.
Same
Just give me spell. Oh. What happens here? Why does it cut off?
Oh, it's got lost. Wait, hang on. Sometimes when you hit that and there's an error, it kind of mushes them together. It's kind of annoying.
That's not what I want. Fix this thing.
Alright, cool. Was that a question?
No, just like with the syntax, I need to put it into quotation marks.
Yep.
It's a string.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so yeah, try running album.first and just check. Dun, 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 it should be there.
Picture, yeah.
Alright. So if you reload album/1, it's still not there. The reason being is that we never changed the view. So let's do it in index. So I would like to see the picture here. And it doesn't print it just because for the boring reason that the ERB template never tells it to. That it says print the title, print the rating, but it doesn't. So let's add an extra column called picture. And you can pretty much just copy one of these and print out a picture. It's not quite going to print the picture yet, but it'll be halfway there. Actually, put some white space just so you can see it. Okay, so it's that line 23. So I just copied the album rating line, duplicated it, and changed it to picture. Alright, and if you reload the page, we don't see the picture, but at least we get the data out. And this is quite often the approach I take when I'm making stuff, of like kind of an almost brute force approach of like, I know in the end I want a picture, but even if I don't know how to do that yet, I'll like just, how can I get slightly closer? Like, can I somehow get this piece of data shoved into the app somehow and then pulled back out again? And I'll worry about how to actually make it work next, as a next step. Because then when I've got, okay, I can pull it out, how can I get it turned into an image, like displayed, just in any way. I don't even care what page it's on, whether it's the right picture or not, as long as I can see like it generally kind of functioning. And then once I've got that, that usually will have given me enough kind of experience at how the thing works and what bits of it function to go, okay, I've managed to get a picture printed out somewhere that I put in somewhere else. How do I adapt that to be the correct picture for the right album? So we've got halfway there. We've managed to like, it's not very elegant, but we've managed to put in an image URL and we've got it back out. What we want is an image tag, because that's why it's not, it's not showing it, because it's literally, we just told it, I want you to print out a H and then a T and then a T. It doesn't know it's an image. And I think that's right. Yeah, so we should be able to just do image src equals blur album.picture. And now, oh crap. Now it's crazy big, but it works. Just out of laziness, I'm going to put width equals 30. Oh, not 30. So we should do some proper CSS stuff to make it nice, but this will be like a quick fix. Again, when you're building a new feature, you kind of always just, like, again, it's the not trying to do it all at once. So right now we have no way for the user to put it in. Like if we go to new album, they still can't put it in. But that's okay, because we've got the other end working. We've got the, if they did magically put it in, we'd be able to print it out. So that's quite often how I'll split things up as well, is like, doesn't have to work all at once. I'll get like the first end and the second end working separately. Okay, so let's make the next end work. So this new album page is albums new, and it is from app views albums new, which says render form. So it actually isn't really rendering anything, it's in this form partial. So it ends up in app views albums form. Alright, and we're in a form helper. These things are a little crazy. But at the end of the day, they're still just normal forms. So we have text field title, and that ends up becoming text field title. And the image tag was just text, so for the moment we can just like copy paste this. So copy the whole field title thing and change it from title to picture. So field label picture, text field picture. And if everything goes to plan, you should have a new field called picture. Picture, copy the URL, and if you type it in, still not showing on the show page actually, so let's maybe from the index copy that image thing and put it into the show template as well. and it's literally just copy and paste, which is, no it's not.
Do I have to add something else on the form? Because if I create a new one, then it's not
Oh.
saving.
Dope. Good point, I forgot a thing. It won't work at all. Dun dun dun, no image. And I'll come back to that in a second, yes. Because it's an extra weird thing that Rails does. Okay, but at the moment, try and make it happen, go back to the index page, you should see a blank bloop. And actually, let's just verify that. So I'm going to go to the console and do album.last, and it's definitely nil. So it's not a problem with the printing out, it's definitely a problem with the going in. And we know it's not the going in general, because we managed to put it in okay in the console. And the reason being, we need to go to albums controller down at the bottom, because there's a security thing that stopped us from putting it in. Okay, we'll come back in a second. It needs an at album, I forgot about that. At symbol just before in the show. Yep. Alright, so we'll still be blank. And we need to go to the controller for this one. And this one is pretty weird, actually. Because again, it's a kind of a historical thing. So down at the bottom, there's this strange album params. Actually, I'll maybe just bring up the Sinatra for a second. So when we did Sinatra, we had a form, it submitted the params to create, and then we did post.new, field A equals field B, field equals field. That would make sense, everybody remember? And then we did .save. And you can imagine if we had like 50 fields, this would get quite long, because it is the same every time, it's just title goes in title, body goes in body. Unless we did something weird, it's never going to change, so all 50 would just be repeating themselves. So Rails has a neat thing that it skips that, and you just say, here are the params, match them up one to one. So the form will have an album title field and an album rating field, and then when you put it in here, it will go, well, I've got a title and a rating, I'm just going to smush them together. Which is very neat, with one exception. Dun dun dun, require and permit. It will only let you put in the fields if you put them in this list. So we need to put picture. And the reason being is, say you had like a user and they could change like their name and date of birth, but you got an admin field as well that was like true or false. You wouldn't want to let them change their admin field on the form, so you make sure it stays off this list. So no matter what crazy stuff they do with the form, if they try and send admin equals true, it just goes, nope, you're not allowed to change your admin. Yep. And it's incredibly annoying because every time you change a field, you end up forgetting about it, and it does what happened here, that it kind of works, but it kind of doesn't, because it fails silently, I think is the annoying thing. It doesn't work, but it doesn't tell you that it doesn't work, and then just kind of pretends everything was fine. So yeah, I will try and mention that over and over and over again, because it's strange and confusing, but that's the gist. If you ever add a new field, actually gotta write that down.
Of course, if you took it out of the private bracket, then you won't be able to add anything.
Yeah, I'll come back to that actually. Private. The private thing you can actually totally ignore. We can delete the word private and nothing happens. I kind of don't know why they have it here. So remember again when you have like a variable, that like a variable inside a function only exists inside the function? This is kind of saying that like these functions should only be usable inside this controller. So nobody from the outside. So like when we did the Twitter helper, we created it in one file but used it in another. It's saying like nobody in the other files is allowed to use these. It's kind of pointless because no one would ever want to use these. Like these only make sense within this controller because it's the album controller and it's like the extra bits for the album controller. So technically it's correct to say like, okay, you can only use these here, but on the other hand, no one's ever gonna. So that private you can entirely ignore for the moment. And it's also not even a security thing, it's more like for your own tidiness. That when you're creating a function or a bunch of functions, you kind of like label them as private, so 2 weeks later you know these are the ones I'm supposed to use from outside and these are the ones I'm not. And it's just out of tidiness rather than security. And it's really this line is doing the security. And it's this exact permit word. Okay, but now that we've added it, I hope it works. If you missed it, on the show page we need to change that copy paste to have an @ oh, yours seems to be working. Because these are @ and the other one wasn't. But if not, it'll explode and tell you. So the same should apply to the edit page. I hope. So now if I edit it, I should see the image there, and the same on the home page. That was okay, actually, that was pretty quick. Alright, so, brief summary. We added a totally normal database field. We just stored an URL to an image, and then we printed it out like totally normal, as if it was a normal text field. We put it into a image tag, so that by the time it gets to the browser never knows about Ruby, about databases. It just sees img src equals, and then the text got printed out. Which is again the kind of approach that you take for ERB. It's like you need to think of it as how do I write the ERB, or you have to think of like what HTML do I want as an end result, and then figure out the ERB to make it work, I guess, instead of thinking how do I do this in ERB. It's more the other way around, as you start from the HTML end. Okay, so that's cool, but we have to do this copy paste thing, which is I don't know, functional. If you were on a really low budget and you had like no time to make the site work, that would be enough. You've given the users at least a way of doing it. But we want to get fancier, so let's bring in the carrierwave craziness. So same again, we need to hit the gem file. You do gem, what is it? Carrierwave. Oh, you guys can't see.
From button or?
Yep. once you've put in the gem, hit the terminal, go to bundle. Leave the server for now, we're going to need to kill it in a second anyway, after we do some device stuff. Okay, so hypothetically you now go to the gem documentation and read it all, but I'm going to walk you through it. And the way that it works is kind of just the way that it works, really. So we do the next step because it tells us to. Generate uploader and album picture. And the way carrierwave works is it has these uploader files which kind of connect everything together. I guess we could create our own by hand, but it's easier to use the generator. So it's Rails generate uploader, and then you can name this pretty much anything. I'm going to call it album underscore picture. And it created a file, app uploaders, album picture uploader. And now would be a good time to restart your server. Which is one thing with carrierwave, I always forget when I install it. There's a 50-50 chance whether this is going to work. There's a thing that happens on some computers but not others. So let's just see how it goes. Okay. But what are we doing? So let's look at the uploader for a second. Actually, maybe just like once you've restarted the server, just like reload a random page on your site. Just make sure everything is still intact. Which is generally a good idea to not do too many steps before you check stuff. Because then if like you're not sure, was it step 3 or was it step 7 or was it step 25? Whereas now at least if it broke, we'd know it was one of those two things we just did. Okay, but everything seems to be fine. So let's look at the uploader. It is in app uploaders album picture uploader. And it has a whole bunch of settings. So it's like saying for this particular picture that the user are going to upload, what do we want to do with it? So for example, down at the bottom there's the scale thing. So we can say when they upload it, resize it to be 200 by 300. We can make multiple versions. Like they can upload a 20 megabyte image, but we will make a 50 by 50 pixel as well. And you can have multiple versions. So there's the original, there's like a thumbnail, there's a medium size, there's like a banner version. That's quite handy, particularly for that reason that like on Facebook, everyone's user pictures are the same size, regardless of what you uploaded. And that's a really, really handy feature. Because then you don't have to, it's no longer the user's responsibility to upload the right thing, it's like you will mangle it. You can kind of enforce a few things, like they're only allowed to upload JPEGs and GIFs and stuff. Or vice versa, you could say, okay, no animated GIFs. Default oil, no blood boring. Or the file name, if you want to rename all the file names when you upload them, you can do it. We can choose where we want to store them, which is not something you usually bother changing, but if there's some particular, if your server has a crazy setup, you could say, okay, I want all the images to go here. Like Facebook does that, they have dedicated image servers, so they'll say, okay, put all the images on the image server entirely, but for the most part you can just leave it.
So in this case it would be, for example, album uploads, album
It's gonna put them in the public folder in a minute.
Yeah, because you can access it, the URLs.
Yep. Yeah, so actually by default we don't need to change anything, because it's good enough already. We maybe want some thumbnails later, but for the moment we're just going to say screw it, I just want images. So you need to create the uploader, but you don't have to edit it unless you really want to. next bit we need to do is to connect it to the album. So I'll just show you the Sinatra version again. So we have the models, and each model has this model definition thing, and that's what tells Ruby or Rails to connect to that table and create like a Ruby version of that table. But it's also where you can put like stuff to do with that model. So in this case, the validations. So they're not things that are really stored in the database, but they gotta go somewhere. So this is a good place for it. In this case, the carrierwave connection is the same thing, that we're gonna tell Rails that like, you have an album table, it's got a field called picture, you wanna kinda like upgrade that to be a carrierwave like uploady thing. And for that, we just do mount uploader. Oh wait. Anyone remember this? Okay, what was the field name?
Is this, no, what is this file?
Just give me a second.
You,
So
you
this
started a new, totally new,
this is app models album.
a new file.
So this already exists because the generator created it for us.
Mods.
Yep. So this is one of the many files that the generator created for us. And basically, if you don't have the model file, Rails will never even look at the table. It won't even bother. Which is a good point, actually. You can have tables in the database that Rails doesn't know about. I don't know. I guess one thing I saw that before was it had like an audit table. So it was like it kind of kept track of all the financial transactions, but we made it so that the Rails app couldn't touch it.
Okay.
Because we don't want to accidentally rewrite the audit history. We want to really know what was there. And it was a different system that did that. Okay, and for this one, again, it's one of those you do it because the documentation says, but the link is, the first one is what is the field name? Like what is the field name on the table? So we could have called the album picture uploader like toaster picture uploader, and it wouldn't matter. We could have called it toaster, toaster, toaster. And we could call the field name potato. It doesn't matter because we tell it, this is the database field, this is the uploader thing I created. This line I just copied out of the uploader, and it's this one, the one with the capital letters in the middle. It's generally best to copy it out of the thing because you might get it wrong. I have an annoying tendency that I call it, when I'm doing it on the terminal, I'll say like picture uploader, but it adds the word uploader, so I end up with like picture uploader, which is very weird. Okay, so again, do a quick reload. Nothing should explode. Oh, that exploded. Oh well, fair enough. Okay, our old images explode. Why did they explode? Okay, because carrierwave has kind of like stomped on them a little bit. So reload your index page, it'll probably look slightly broken, but not completely. Okay, and the reason being, if you look at the image SRC, it started to do something a bit weird. That it's taken the bit from the database, but also kind of shoved some stuff in front of it. And that's just because we've mixed two systems and now they're interfering. So let's go to the edit page. and fix it. And we kind of have a problem now, because we want to upload a picture. We want to be able to click, like, browse, and then the user clicks around their hard drive and chooses a picture. And for that we need to change the form, because we've told it we want a text field. Now we need to tell it I want file field. So that was app views albums form, and I just changed the picture field, or the field for the picture to be a file field. Let's see if I can get that up there. Now this thing should change to a chooser chubby. Hopefully I have some images. Choose an image, and if everything goes to plan, it just works. Yes. Let's see. Let's do that.
Not sure if that is.
Alright, I'm going to start putting in Stackademy, there's a folder called example media. I'm going to try and fill it up with a bunch of images, because every time you're doing these apps you need, like, things, and you end up running around your computer trying to find stuff. Yeah, I have no idea what I was doing there. Oh, flashbacks. Okay, anyway, but it should work. That if you edit or create a new one, it will let you choose a picture. You can go straight to the upload, or just as soon as you hit update, it now goes straight in there.
But it doesn't work with it will never show the old pictures.
The old ones are currently broken. We could do some kind of if statement thing, but it's be more effort. Alright, and I guess a few things. We didn't have to change a lot else. We still kept the template the same, where it's an image tag and it prints out the picture. And that is because album.picture carrierwave kind of intercepts and figures out where's the picture. If I look at the database, will this work? Where's the reload icon? Over here? Oh, I need to reopen this. So if I look over on the right in the database, this is what it's stored. Literally just the word audio.jpg. Whereas if I look at the URL, or well, conveniently I don't need to look at the URL, it just handles it for me. I'm going to look at the URL for data occasional value. It's looking in /upload/album/picture/1/audio. So it's put together like an URL for us, and we don't have to worry about where it's storing it. Where it is storing it is in public uploads album picture 1 audio. And that's the thing, so it knows where to put the file, and then it knows where to find the file. So we never really have to bother unless something's broke or we're doing something crazy. And that's especially useful when you've got like all the thumbnails and stuff, that it figures out where to store the thumbnail and how to pull it back out, that you don't have to worry. Okay, yeah, so we just say print out the URL, it figures out, last time I did it, I put it in here, I'll give you that back. pretty much the core bit. I'll do a couple of fancy bits in a second, but that's it really. So to do image uploads, you just have a normal, oh yeah, and I guess that's kind of the, I don't know, abstract philosophical thing that it doesn't store the picture in the database. Because the database is rubbish at storing like big files. If someone uploaded like a 5 megabyte image, or if everybody uploaded 5 megabyte images, the database would just like collapse. So it only stores a reference. Because you can also use carrierwave to upload anything, like music or videos, and you can just change the settings to make that happen.
What did we do with this mount, uploader, and step, etc.?
Basically just tell it that it exists. So you can reuse this uploader for like 20 different things. So maybe say it's like a profile picture uploader, and you say profile pictures have to be 50 pixels by 50 pixels. So you figure out what all the settings for a profile picture should be. But maybe a user has a profile picture and a group, like a Facebook group style thing, has a profile picture, and Facebook pages and cats or whatever. That you have multiple things that want to use the same kind of picture. So you can reuse this. Or you have profile picture and message picture or something. So the uploader is only really like the rules for the uploading process for the most part. So it's things like where do I store it and what should I resize it to. But that's about it. Does that make sense? It is a little weird.
So here it's linked to the album table, but otherwise.
Yeah, so it's like saying on the album table I have 2 fields, which I don't really have, but pretend we do. And those fields are both pictures, and they should use the rules of the album picture uploader. So to be honest, you can just make, like in the beginning, just one generic picture uploader, and just reuse it over and over and over again until the same thing. It's only if you really like need them different.
So it's kind of 3 steps. So in the form field, obviously you need a picture uploading button or something like that, and we call it file field that's uploading.
Yep.
And in the album picture uploader, we don't change anything. And then but basically we take the name, the class of the picture uploader, which we have named in the generator.
Yep.
And put it into the album RB in the
Yep. So I'm going to post a link to this later, carrierwave. So the steps are quite nicely printed in the Rails Girls guide. Is this it? Oh, maybe it's the other one. Okay, I can't remember where it is. But I'll find it. I'll post it later. And the reason why it's quite nice is because it just explains like the steps, like just in it, do this 1, 2, 3, because it's mostly like, coach, now you fill in the details. So it's quite good to use as a reference of just like, wait, what were the 3 steps? Okay, gem carrierwave, bundle, generate uploader, and mount uploader. So this one's quite good just to remind you through it. Alright, but I'll post that later. Alright, I'm gonna put mine back. Alright, so we have 15 minutes, so let's do a little bit of fanciness. Let's make a thumbnail. So if you head to the uploader, and do you have Brew?
I think so.
Alright. Next bit might get a bit bumpy. So we want to do down the bottom, there's a version thumb. We want to uncomment that. There's a whole bunch of options with this resize to fit. You can do like scale to fit and like crop and resize, so like depending on whether you want it to like chop bits off or blah 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 blah. There's like 1,000,001 variations. So this means when we upload it, we'll get the original version and a second version in this size. But we also need to, for that to work, we need to uncomment this include carrierwave mini magic line, because that's the gem that does the actual conversion. Wait, and I just need to look at stuff for a second. Oh well, let's just Google gem mini magic. Alright, so we need to install that gem to make it work, so let's hit the gem file again. Ooh, not that. And so it's gem mini underscore magic with a K. And I'll explain what it is in a second. The next bit varies by operating system. So before we do bundle, if you're on a Mac or if you're on a Ubuntu, it's sudo apt get install image magic. Does this work? I'm just going to test this works. Yep, okay, wasn't sure how to spell it. I think in yours, brew install image magic. So image magic in general is like a program, just a normal like system program that the mini magic kind of just hooks into and uses it. And it's like the Swiss Army knife of converting images. That you tell it, take this image, resize it to this, do this process, do that, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of like command line or like scriptable Photoshop. That you tell it, do this step, then that step, then this step. Here are 50 images, do that to them. We're not going to use it directly, but carrierwave will use it behind the scenes. That one is kind of a step that gets forgotten a lot, because you'll end up, it works on your computer and then you take his project and start running it, and then it explodes because you haven't installed it. So if you ever get weird errors where it goes, I can't resize images, that's probably why. Okay, and we need to do a bundle again. And probably restart the server. Actually, yeah, definitely restart the server.
You want to install image magic before you bundle stuff?
I think it probably will actually let you bundle, but to be on the safe side, do it first. Okay, let's see if this works. Alright, okay, so what do we want to do? So maybe create a new one entirely. So if everything worked okay when you reload the index, it should not explode. Just hit new album, resized, choose a file, example media, I'll take this big robot. Okay, and everything should still work. worked, but it's not really obvious that it worked. So, well, the first bit of it working is that it didn't explode, which quite often happens at this point, so that was a good sign. And so what we had on the index was we used to be printing out the full-sized original picture and resizing it with the HTML. That's a bit of a problem if you've got like 20 people who've uploaded 5 megabyte images, because it'll work, but you'll see it kind of go and take 5 minutes to load. What would be much better is if we could print out the thumb and get rid of this width. And hopefully, admittedly, only the new one that you created will work. The old one will temporarily be broken. But now we don't have to tell it your width is 100, because we can trust that the thing that we uploaded got resized to be, I think, 50 by 50. Alright, there's a way to make the old ones regenerate the thumbnails, but it's a bit of a story for another day. Yeah, the old ones will break.
You're not even the web development.
No, those like the other, like even the ones you uploaded before, they also break because they sometimes don't get generated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But if you edit them and then add the
Gotcha.
picture again, then it will get generated.
Yeah, so the show page still works for the old ones, because it's showing the normal one, but the index page wants to print out the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And the problem is it only generates the thumbnail during the upload process.
Yeah.
I forget how there's a thing you can do to say, hey, redo them all, which is sometimes important. When you've got an existing site, you can't just tell everyone, please re-upload your images.
Or you generally want to resize images. Or you generally want to resize images, like if you want to mess with.
Yep, so it can be done, but I forget off the top of my head, and we're running out of time. Yeah, so that's the gist. You can now set in this thing the different versions, you can enforce sizes, and yeah, I mean, basically that's most of the stuff you want to do with images. There's nothing, because at the moment it won't let us upload anything, or like we used to be able to, we could give it a movie or a PDF or something. At the moment it'll break because we just told it we want you to resize it. So if we try and resize a PDF, it'll break, but if we didn't have this, it would be totally fine with it. And obviously, because we have an image tag, it would break, but yeah, so in general that is carrierwave. You have normal fields, normal database that store, or that carrierwave itself will store the URL in. You don't really need to worry about it other than generally knowing that that's where it's going to store it, and it will do the rest for you. The process for installing carrierwave is mostly just install the gem and create an uploader with the generator, and then you need to tell it what fields in the database should be kind of turned into carrierwave fields, and you do those in the models. And then the other bits you just need to fiddle with the user interface to make that work. Like once you've got the uploads working, you need to tell it, print it out in an image tag, and vice versa, you need to change the form to actually let you upload stuff. I mean, those aren't strictly mandatory. You could upload it, like you can do stuff on the console if you really wanted. If you have some elaborate system, people can email things in, and then you take the pictures out of the email and put it up, but that's the standard pattern.
Somewhat unrelated specific thing, like why in this case do we know not just install the gem and add it to the gem file? Well, why did we also have to have the Zulu app?
Because where's it going? So the gem that we installed doesn't really do anything on its own.
Okay, so it's a gem for an application
Yeah.
called ImageMagick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So ImageMagick is used by like everybody, PHP, Java, C apps, like I don't know, even video games have it shoved in there sometimes. And the mini magic is really just like a tiny Ruby layer that talks to it.
Mhm.
Yep, and that's why we needed to install it.